Hello everyone! We are debriefing how I pitched to Stephen Bartlett and what happened afterwards once I was up on the stage with Stephen in Nusa Dua. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I also just want to preface that if you are listening to the orange juice theory, I do not want you leaving this podcast without taking down notes, taking down lessons that you have learned and actioning them. Guys, there's no point of you wasting your time. Time is money. There is no point listening to this, wasting time and not actioning anything from it. So my one request is, if you are going to be a listener of the orange juice theory, you have to action what it is that we stand for. And that is peeling back the layers of your orange, applying pressure and discomfort, squeezing your orange to get the juice. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it is uncomfortable. But that is what it takes if you want to get to where you want to be. Whether it's dreams, goals, ambitions, or the business you are building, it is not going to look pretty. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's exhausting, but that is what it takes. And so if you're not serious about that, or you don't want to listen to harsh truths, then this podcast is not for you. Let's delve in to how we made this happen. So Stephen has frameworks that he uses and that he teaches us in his podcast, that he uses himself, and also that we learn from the guests that he gets on. The whole point of the Diary of a CEO was for him to interview CEOs so that we could learn from them as to what to do as people who are starting out or who want to build their own business, or just lessons in general about life and mindset and what it actually takes to have a successful business or to go after your dreams. And I have been a listener of the Diary of a CEO for about 5 years now, I would say, and longer. And everything that I used from the diary that I applied to my own life catapulted me into where I am today. It helped me start my own business. Then it helped me lean into discomfort. It helped me do the thing embarrassed. It helped me to show up scared. And that's exactly why I want to create the orange juice theory, is to help as much people as possible not be bound by their environment, not to use that they don't have money as an excuse, because I didn't either. I literally started from zero. And to not allow the opinions of others to design their career path or what it is that they should do. And to be bold and take up space. And that will open doors for you that you never thought possible. Gaining attention. Attention is currency. If you can gain someone's attention on Instagram in general, you are going to win over the person who could be better than you or is better than you. But if they can't garner attention, they've lost. So Stephen talks about how to get his attention in the podcast episode with Daniel, Cody and Alex, and also in the BTs of the diary. And I'm sure in so many other episodes in the diary as well. All the answers are in his podcast and in Behind the Diary. You just need to listen to them. Equally, when you are listening to this podcast, you need to listen and take notes as to what it is that you can use as leverage today to action towards your goals. So he shows us direct lines of communication in the BTs of the diary, and why direct lines of communication are not a good way to reach him. By email, by Instagram DM, they're going to get lost. So you need to think in the corners of the boxes and outside the box as to how you can garner his attention. That's when we decided that we would catch a flight to Bali and use that as our leverage to gain his attention, in the hopes of gaining his attention. So the first post would look like, I caught a flight to Bali to tell my story. The podcast studio that we want to be underneath is Flight Story. So it's like a play on words. And thinking outside the box as to how we could gain his attention, that something no one else has done before with zero marketing budget. So that's when we said we would use the pitch and the launch were part of the start of the rebrand. So the Orange Juice series all around defying the odds and going after your goals and dreams and doing whatever it takes to get there. Peeling back the layers of your orange, it's uncomfortable. It's hard. When you apply pressure and discomfort and you squeeze the orange, you get the juice, which is the best part. But it's messy and it's hard and you have to refine it over time. And the whole idea around the Orange Juice series to defy the odds and squeeze the juice, no matter how uncomfortable it is or how hard it is to peel back the layers with uncertainty, unfamiliarity. You don't know what juice you're going to get. You don't know how much bits is going to be in it, how long it's going to take to refine, etc. That's the whole idea. And I thought the only way that I will gain trust and respect from other people or from Flight Story themselves is by doing something so audacious and pushing past my own limiting beliefs and paper walls by going after the thing. And that's what we did. So we used a lot of lessons that we learned from the diary, which are attention is currency. So catching a flight to Bali is crazy. Some people mightn't think it is, but we had no budget. So I was like, I'm going to catch a flight to Bali in order to harness his attention and use that as leverage. Then Stephen always talks about useless absurdity. So when he set up Social Chain, he had a slide in the middle of the office, and that's what garnered a lot of attention. And again, attention is currency. And we thought, how could we use useless absurdity to our advantage? And that's where the idea of the oranges on my head came into play, and the tiara and the red lip and the green suit. It was different. It was scroll stopping, and people were like, what the hell? What the actual hell is this girl doing? And that's what gains attention. They did it really well with Sydney Sweeney and the bath soap. They created a bar of soap from Sydney Sweeney's bath water, this company, I can't think of the name, and genius, absolutely genius. And that again comes back to attention is currency. Okay, so now Stephen and them have, if you watch the Behind the Diary, as you come into the Flight Story studio in London, they're actually going to have a astronaut who opens the door for you, who's hanging from the ceiling, who opens the door and welcomes you in. Crazy, weird, genius. You know, it's like people will never forget that. So you want something that catches attention, that's unforgettable, that people have to stop and be like, what is going on here? And when you have that, that's when you know you've gained people's attention. And that just comes from being audacious. So we had the oranges. We decided to have the oranges on my head, the tiara, the red lip, the green suit. And we did a shoot all around that. And then our second shoot, we decided to have posters and to find out people who are on his team and use that as leverage too. So we called out Will, who is Stephen's cameraman, and we just had a play on words with everything. So we had his tag on Instagram and we said, BT's with Will, this is our pulp fiction, help us capture it. A lot of people mightn't know Pulp Fiction if they're not into movies. If you don't know Pulp Fiction, have you been living under a rock? Quentin Tarantino, it's iconic. But we presumed that Will would know that as someone who is into film, photography, you know, surely he's going to know who Quentin Tarantino is. If he doesn't, then I don't know, but we still got his attention. And we also used Davina McCall's episode with Stephen, where she said, you have to be so annoying. You have to stand front and centre anywhere you go to open doors that you have never been in through before, or to sit in rooms that you want to be in. You have to ask. You don't ask in this life, you don't get, guys. The sooner you understand that, the better. The sooner you take up space and you are heard and seen, that's when things will start to happen for you. Sitting back and watching other people doing it, or sitting in silence isn't going to get you to where you want to be. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's hard. It's also hard sitting on the sidelines. I'd rather be in the shit and being like, what the hell am I doing? And figuring it out along the way, rather than sitting on the sidelines, watching my life go by and being like, oh, I wish I could do that. Stop victimizing. This is your life. You get to choose how you want to show up and how you're going to go after it. There's no difference between me and the person listening, especially now. I'm in the building phases of all of this. I'm just building boldly and doing it online, publicly, and I don't care if I'm going to fail or not. Failure is great. If you can develop a really good relationship with failure, it's fantastic, because you learn so much lessons through failing. And all the best people know that. The most successful people in our life, or in your life, or people you look up to, they have the best relationship with failure ever. They do not care about failing. The quicker you fail, the quicker you learn. Again, perfection is the enemy of good as well. That's something that I do not care about, perfection. I would rather input and volume and doing more reps come first over perfection. And that's something you can work on as well. Oftentimes, perfectionists use it as an excuse to procrastinate or to not go after the thing because they're scared. Don't let your excuses or fear hold you back from going after what it is you truly want. Don't let it. If you take anything from this podcast, learn that you can do it scared. You have done things scared before. You have learned how to ride a bike. You did it scared. You fell off a couple of times and eventually you got it. The same with driving a car. Maybe you crashed a few times. Maybe you failed your driving test 6 or 7 times. You passed it eventually. Persistence, resilience, showing up, doing it anyway, doing it scared. There's so much to be said for it. That's actually the formula, and that's what it takes. It's not that someone is more talented or that they get lucky. Truly, anyone who is successful, maybe some people have had a stroke of luck, but I truly believe that you create your own. I think you create your own luck in this world. I think if you do something long enough and you are obsessive in it and you put in all of the input, all of the volume and all of the reps consistently over time, I truly don't think that there's any way that it cannot conform, especially if it's aligned and it's coming from your heart. Now, Stephen says in Behind the Diary not to message him directly. He shows us that there's direct lines of communication to him. These are email, Instagram DM, LinkedIn DM, whatever. Okay? You're not going to gain his attention that way. So that's when you have to think outside the box. And that's when we came up with the signs and catching the flight to Bali and then launching the page by posting all of this. And then we used, everything is a copy, guys. So we used the strategy they used for We Need to Talk was absolutely fantastic with Paul Brunson. If you go back on We Need to Talk's Instagram page and you scroll down, you will see how they launched We Need to Talk, and it was genius. And we got AI to do up billboards to catch Stephen's attention by using other people. So by using Simon Squibbs. Now, I don't even think Simon saw it in the end, but it's interesting. People are curious. They're like, what is this? What's happening? It's really cool. Then Useless Absurdity, using the oranges on the head and the tiara, the red lip, getting into the middle of a pool, a swimming pool. People being like, why is this girl in a swimming pool with oranges and a tiara on her head? What the actual hell? And then the signs in the middle of the shortcut in Canggu, which is the busiest road arguably in Bali. And we also used what Davina says to be annoying and to stand front and centre, like I was just saying before this. And then the only leverage that I had, I was going through the frameworks that I was going to use that Daniel Priestley chatted about, Cody Sanchez and Alex Hormozy and Stephen. And I've watched that episode and studied it, I would say 11 or 12 times, even more. And they were chatting about different frameworks you can use to pitch to someone. And I didn't actually have budget. I didn't have money. And that's why you can actually click into the link in Flight Fund's bio and you can ask to get your company funded through that link. But we'd no budget, we'd no money. And Cody said at the end of that episode that sometimes all you need is a story, because that's all Stephen had. Stephen pitched in future money and someone believed in him because he had an incredible story. And Cody said at the end that sometimes all you need is an incredible story. And that's what I used. I just used my story as leverage. And also placing Stephen as the hero in our story, because, not to sound cringe, but he is the hero in our story because he's the one that helped me the whole way up when I was in the back arse of nowhere in the south of Ireland, walking the roads every single morning during lockdown, hanging on to every single interview and word that they were saying in those interviews in the Diary of a CEO to see how was I going to make this happen for myself. And that's how I started my first business, which was K Coaching, from a horse shed in the middle of nowhere. And then I ended up traveling the world and doing things I never thought possible. And then I ended up using the same blueprint without really realising again that I was building another business off the back of that when I moved to Australia, and I did the Run Club. And had I not had those conversations that I was listening to from the diary, I know that I wouldn't be here, because I wouldn't have learned how to do it. I wouldn't have learned those lessons of how to show up embarrassed. Embarrassment is the cost of entry. And that was another thing that we used as leverage. Stephen says embarrassment is the cost of entry all the time. We placed him as the hero in the story, the Rice ideology. Andrew, the CIA spy, I can't think of his second name, in Stephen's podcast episode, one of the episodes, he uses that Rice framework to help with getting information from someone or getting something from someone. And basically, we put Stephen in as the hero in our story and used coercion, ego, ideology, reward to get him to fund us. And the biggest thing I think we used as leverage so well was being embarrassed, being willing to go to those lengths to get his attention and to use all of the lessons that he has taught us throughout the diary and throughout behind the diary and put them all together to create this pitch and to get his attention and to hopefully, like I said, pitch to him on stage in Nusa Dua. And that's what happened. And I also think as well that there's a lot to be said for just being audacious and trusting yourself and backing yourself and believing yourself and going full force at the thing and not giving yourself a plan B. And that's what we did. Now, what happened? What's the ins and outs and what's the juice of it all? So let me get into it. People are asking, did I know that I was going up on stage before I went down to Nusa Dua? No, I did not know I was going up on that stage. I knew deep in my heart that there was a really high chance that I was going on stage. And the only way I can describe that is this knowing that I think I knew so much that I'd practiced my pitch so many times. I had flashcards written out. I practiced it inside out, upside down. I wasn't sleeping because I had this knowing that this was going to happen, that I was going to defy the odds and this pitch was happening. And I have to say that I had that knowing in me. I didn't know how. I just knew that this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I am supposed to do. I'm supposed to do the podcast full time. I'm supposed to help people push past their limiting beliefs, push past their paper walls and go after the thing that they most desire. That is what I believe that I am here to do. And it's what I love so much. And I just had this knowing is all I can describe it as. Also, I did a lot of Joe Dispenza's meditations. I wrote down this happening in the present so many times for months on end. I spoke it into existence that this was happening. And I truly believed it. And of course, there was so much fear and doubt and anxiety and what if and I can't do it. Of course, there was that side of my brain, but there was also that deep knowing that this is what I'm made for and this is what I need to do and this is what I'm supposed to do. And that's something that you need to exercise and that you need to consistently practice over time in order to use that as a muscle that you can. And I used Joe Dispenza's meditations, and also I listened a lot to Neville Goddard. And he's someone I listen to most mornings and most nights before I go to bed, if not every night. And I think manifestation works if you put an overwhelming amount of action behind it and you're aligned in what you're doing. I think there's no choice but for things to conform. But I do think you need to put in the work and the reps and the action. But the manifestation definitely helps with believing in yourself and backing yourself. And going down in the car, I was just practicing for the 2 hours going down in the car to Noosa Dua. I was just practicing my pitch again and again. And the girls were like, you're going on that stage. And I was like, yeah, there's a high chance that I'm going on that stage. And I just by that point had completely detached from the outcome. I was so weirdly calm is the only way I can describe it, which is weird for me because usually I'm very highly strung. And I just had this overwhelming sense of calm that it was done, that's what was happening. And I sat at the back. I thought I had bought us tickets at the front. Our seats were at the back. And you had to scan the barcode to ask a question to Stephen for the Q&A part that he was doing. And I missed the meet and greet tickets. They were sold out by the time I actually realised that they were a thing. And so I didn't get to meet him beforehand. And I knew he had seen our posts. That's something that I should definitely have said. The post that I posted that said I followed Stephen Bartlett to Bali, because all of you tagged him so much, which I need to thank you all for so much, to the people who sent him the post, DM'd him the post, tagged him, liked the post. I owe you everything, because he saw the post that the next day when I woke up after posting that post, I actually have all of the journey of this saved as highlights to my Instagram, my personal Instagram page. And it was when I posted that post that there was so much fear and anxiety, the one that said I followed Stephen Bartlett to Bali. I just had this overwhelming sense of doubt, fear, of judgment. I felt that was the most vulnerable post I think I had ever posted. And the overwhelm and fear that came with being seen and being so visible, because for so long I was saying for months on end that I was following Stephen Bartlett to Bali, this is what we were doing, this is what's happening, and it wasn't out there yet, it wasn't out in the open. And then when it was out, I was like, this man is either going to think I'm a genius or he's going to think that I am batshit crazy and that I'm a psycho. And that's when I came onto my stories at 11 o'clock at night, bawling, crying on my stories, being like, what am I doing? I'm crazy. Who do I think I am following Stephen Bartlett Bally? I literally had no makeup on. I was in my pajamas. I literally was a state. I was an absolute state. And because all of you tagged him in the post, the next morning I woke up and I was in the gym, and I can just remember before the gym, Daniel Priestley, who was on the episode, who's an incredible entrepreneur who I've learned so much from Stephen's podcast. He was on the episode chatting about how to pitch and frameworks to use, and we were using his frameworks to pitch to Stephen. And he replied to my story saying, go for it. And when I woke up and saw that message the next morning from Daniel Priestley being like, go for it, I was like, there is no way in hell that we're back. There was never an option of backing out. But the fear and the anxiety and doubt that was creeping in after posting what I had just posted, saying I followed Stephen Bartlett Bally, was so large. And the fear was insane. I can't even explain it. I wasn't sleeping for 3 weeks up until this point. I was not sleeping because I was so scared and terrified and fear-induced. When you've looked up to someone for so many years and you've seen yourself in them for so many years, and then you're putting out this thing where you're following them to Bali in the hopes that they'll fund you, it's so terrifying. It's terrifying. But when Daniel Priestley messaged me saying go for it, I was like, you know what? We are going full force at this thing. Like, those from the top and those doing better than you will never judge you. And that was a clear sign of that. And then I went to the gym on 3 hours sleep after posting that post. Daniel Priestley replied being like, go for it. And everyone was tagging Stephen and Flight Fund and Flight Story. And I was in the gym, and I'll never forget it. Hebe came running over to me, and she had just put up a story saying how proud of me she was, and she was tagging Stephen in her story as well, you know, that this is what I'm doing, this is what she's seen me do over the last couple of months, blah, blah, blah. And she looked at me in the gym and she was like this and came running over, and I was like, no. And I was like, no. And she was like, no, Kate, look. And I was like, Stephen had seen her story. And I was like, oh my God. So does that mean he's after clicking into me to see my story? Because she was on about me and she tagged me and the orange juice theory. And we checked all my stories and he hadn't seen them yet. So that's when I decided to post. There was a post that we had that a Balinese man was like, Stephen, we gotta fly to tell our story. And we didn't get him to say that. He actually just said it. And then we were telling him what we were doing. And then we were like, can we get a video of you saying that? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. He had already said it. So, and we were telling him what we were doing. And he was like, yeah. And then I was like, that video was so iconic. If Stephen has seen Hebe's stories, I'm going to post this post straight away in the gym, and hopefully this will be the one that catches his attention. And we posted that straight away and he saw it. And then about an hour later, I was sitting in a cafe, shook, getting ready to work, and I went through all of my stories of me bawling, crying, being like, what the hell am I doing? In my pajamas, literally no makeup on, I look a state, saying, I'm a psychopath. Why did I follow Stephen Bartlett Bally? All of this crack, and how scary it is to go after your dreams. And he had seen every single one of them. And I was like, he is either going to think that I am batshit crazy and he's going to need security in Nusa Dua, or he's going to think I'm a genius. And from there, that's when I knew we had all of their attention. We had the team's attention, we had Stephen's attention, and they were either watching us or they'd either dismissed us and were like, what the hell, this girl is a nut job, we're ignoring it. But I'd found out later that they were watching us the entire time. So from there, when we knew that he'd seen the stories, and I didn't say that online straight away because I didn't want to come across like I'd already had it or I was a fangirl or whatever. And I didn't want them to think that I wasn't taking things seriously. And that's when we went full. We were always going to go full throttle with all the posts, but we just blew it out of the park in the sense of like posting twice to 3 times a day, and using all the posts that we had organised through the shoots that we had done. And we just left it all out on the table. And then I remember messaging him just before the show saying, because Sophie was like, Katie's going to think you're like baby reindeer. I was like, oh my God, please don't think that I'm stalking you. I'm not stalking you. And I'd no response from any of the team. I'd no messages from any of the team. But I had put it out there that I wanted to pitch to them on stage. Whether they saw that or not, I don't know. And then when we were sitting at the back in Noosa Dua, there was a QR code where you could ask questions. And I just put in to that, hi Stephen, it's Kate. I know you know who I am. I am underneath the orange juice theory. And my question to you is, what would it take to become a podcaster beneath Flight Story? And the talk was all around embarrassment as the cost of entry. And then we had a break. I was in the toilet topping up my makeup. I just had no other feeling but a sense of calm. I had detached from the whole thing. I didn't even think about going up on stage in those moments. I just had detached from the entire thing. It's the only way I can describe it. And then he said, before we go into the Q&A, I want to circle back to embarrassment is the cost of entry. And it was in that moment that I knew I was going on stage. And he said, is Kate here? And that was it. I knew, I was like, what the hell? The only way I can describe it was like an outer body experience, relief, that when you've worked so hard for something for so long and so many years, and you've put everything that you've got with no money into it, and the person that you look up to the most believes in you, there is no feeling that will ever come close to that feeling. I can't put it into words. I will never be able to put it into words. And I just remember going up, then walking up and visualizing that moment so many times. And his manager, Dom, was so nice, and he was like, Kate, are you okay? Are you well done? Are you sure you're okay? And I was like, my heart was like here. It wasn't even here. It was like literally here. And I was like, literally just split seconds before I went on stage, I was getting up the steps, I was like, Kate, you need to pull it together now. Because I was like, you have not worked this hard to get up on stage and feck everything up, basically. So I just had to really pull it together, even though that was super hard. I pulled it together, and I think because I'd worked so hard for that moment, I just wasn't going to let nerves or fear overtake. And I think when you've practiced something so many times and you've rinsed something so many times, it is actually very difficult not to be confident in what you're doing. And that moment I will just never, ever forget, ever. And I actually have the full speech that I did on stage. And if you want that, just send me a screenshot of you subscribing to our channel. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, screenshot, send it to the Orange Juice Theory on Instagram, and I will send you the full pitch or the full speech on stage that I did. And then Stephen did ask what made me look so, what made me want to what made me not care so much and look so embarrassed. And I just said that when you've been gifted with skills and talents, it's not for you, it's for other people. And when you take your ego out of something, you just pursue being scared anyway. You just do it anyway, because it's not for you, it's for other people. And this podcast isn't for me. It's for all of us. Me building this podcast is me going after my dreams, but you guys need to come along with me. You need to go through discomfort. You need to peel back the layers of your orange. You need to come on this journey with me, and you need to build with me as we're doing this. We're doing it together. We're a team. It's not me telling you what to do. No, we're doing this together. We're building this together. That's what it's about. And when I went backstage, I was a million miles a minute. I was like, oh my God, guys, did I speak okay? Did I come across okay? I can't remember what I said. Da, 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 da. Everything that I'd practiced went out the window, but the guys said that I came across really well, because it obviously came together in some way. It just didn't come together exactly as I'd rehearsed it word by word. And I just was a million miles a minute talking. There was a guy following me. It wasn't Will, it was someone else. Part of Stephen's team, and I just remember going a million miles a minute, being like, this is how we did it, this is what we did, this is what we used from the podcast, this is how I knew that this is what I was meant to do, this is blah blah blah, like all the strategy that we used behind it. And I think Dom was like, this girl is crazy. He's just standing there looking at me being like, this girl is psychotic and possessed and crazy. And he was like, you obviously knew we were watching us. And I was like, watching me and the orange juice theory and stuff. And I was like, I didn't. Like, I knew you were watching, but I also was like, they're going to think I'm an absolute batshit crazy bitch, and that I'm a genius, or that I'm psychotic, and that there needs to be a restraining order for me coming to Nusa Dua. And he was just laughing. And then he did say that it would take a couple of months before they got to organise things in regards like funding and how they were going to organise the logistics of everything. But that, because they're super busy at the minute, and I just said, that is absolutely no problem. I just couldn't believe that I did it. And he was so kind and so nice to me, gave me like details of like how to move forward. Obviously I can't give you like all the deets until like we're doing the thing, but yeah, it was just, that was it. It was, they gave me the ins and outs of the next steps forward, and I was able to like email them the next day thanking them. And I cried for hours and hours. I didn't sleep that night. I cried for, I would say, 48 to 72 hours after. And that feeling of ringing my mom afterwards is just, and my sister and my dad and my brother, like, it's like hard to put into words. It's hard to put into words. And my sister said, you know, and she's so right, you know, when people ask you like, what made you go to those lengths? And my sister just said, if people only knew where we like come from and what it was like, that's how you can understand that you will do anything it takes to get to where you want to be. And that pain is something that I use as my fuel of not having the money or not having the means to do certain things that money limited us by, and that's not going to be the case for me or for any of my family anymore. And I will do everything that I can to ensure that I get to where I need to be financially, and also in my actual life, like that I'm born to speak on stages and to help as much people as possible, and to invest in young entrepreneurs and give them the platform that they need in order to build. And that's what I've been sent here to do, and that's what I'm going to do. So that's it. I will keep you in the loop, obviously, as we go throughout the podcast and the episodes. I will keep you in the loop as to what's happening, any updates, and where we're going next. But I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you took lessons from it, and that you wrote down what you need to do in order to get to where you need to be. And maybe one piece of action that you can take today is to learn that attention is currency. So what can you do in order to harness attention by using useless absurdity? So the likes of like oranges on my head, what can you use in your business to garner attention using useless absurdity to gain attention? And like everything is a copy. So use the billboards, think outside the box. What can you do to gain attention so that you get eyes or traffic onto your business or your page? And go think of something, go do it, and send us pictures once you've it done. I hope you enjoyed listening, and I'll chat to you all in the next one. Thanks, everyone.